I'm Rory from XR Today, bringing you the latest in news and conversation from the extended reality space. Today, I'm joined by Adam Mangana, Executive Director for VR Education Experts, Optima Domi, and Vincent Jordan, their Chief Technology Officer. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us, Rory. We're excited to be here.
Hello, Rory.
That's fantastic. To start us off, could you introduce us to the Optima Foundation and why you chose to adopt VR and what issues were you intending to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Vince and I have been working in this space for quite a while, and we had piloted virtual reality education prior to the pandemic, but we were doing it in brick and mortar schools. And Vince and I had built some of the largest VR labs in the southeastern United States and had begun using it as a supplementary tool for learning for scholars really all over the country. And so, one of the things that we were looking very closely at was the research coming out of Stanford that showed VR as a tool that made learning more efficient. Students were learning things twice as fast, retaining things twice as long. I happen to have a classics background, and when the pandemic hit, our friends at the Optima Foundation in Southwest Florida, were looking at a way to take classical education online, but they were looking at more traditional two-dimensional solutions. And because classical education is a virtue-based model where we're talking about the common courtesy of connection, and we're talking about humanity and Socratic discussions, the great books, and the 7 liberal arts, we knew that as a delivery model, VR was the very best tool to create that connection and sense of presence in the metaverse where people were getting to know each other. If you think about what problems we're trying to solve here, right? The first big problem is the loneliness issue, that inherently online education was designed as a correspondence course and something that students access asynchronously. And so to really improve live instruction, Zoom was not engineered for great pedagogy, right? It was engineered for meetings, this checkerboard of faces. You have essentially 25 different classrooms. When you put the VR headset on, we're back to one classroom at which the teacher is at the center. So we felt like the tool is in terms of giving kids the opportunity to focus on what's most important was an excellent tool. The second thing that we were solving for was the lack of the quality of content, right? So there hasn't been a lot of VR content designed for upper elementary and middle school students. And so we wanted to focus on bringing very content-rich experiences for our students to make that learning more efficient, to create meaning, and to create engagement. Right. So one of the key factors to whether or not online education is successful is the level of engagement. And so you can't accomplish that without really rich content facilitated by a content expert. And the last thing that we were solving for was the user design and user interface. The world got a chance to experience crisis school during the pandemic. And what most folks found is that in order for a third grader, fourth grader, fifth grader to do school, they required a parent to handle all of the executive functioning. And so we were taking analog educational assets, creating PDFs of them and requiring, third graders to print those PDFs and then upload them back. And so we wanted to just solve for that and make the user design and user experience something that students could feel ownership of. And again, that ties to engagement. If the student can do the work, and not from a capacity perspective or for an intellectual perspective, but from an executive functioning perspective, then they are much more likely to be engaged. And parents don't feel like they have to reinvent the wheel in terms of having to do third grade over again. So that's why we built the world's first VR school. But we are using a great cadence of both synchronous VR content and asynchronous content that we're building in a learning management system.
Fantastic. And to go from what you mentioned about the amount of VR content for educational use cases, why did you choose to partner with Engage VR for your learning platform? Was it due to their options of VR content?
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Adam. So we, again, our experience over the years with different virtual reality platforms, and watching the social platforms really start to come to life during the pandemic, because there was an opportunity to, leverage those. We'd both been working with Engage since 2017, very early on with the platform, and we've watched it grow and grow and grow during that time. But we still did the due diligence process of basically getting a license to the top 10 platforms out there that we could find, and going in and experiencing each one of those to see what they were like. And the Engage platform was just so rich and growing richer, really by the week, by the month, in terms of what they were doing inherently with their platform, but then also the flexibility that it gave us, because we knew that for education content to run a school, it's going to really be on us. We're going to have to craft most of that. And in terms of a platform that allows you to craft quickly and thoroughly what you want to present in it and utilize in it, the Engage platform, from our experience, is just heads and shoulders above anything else that we were able to experience and work with. And then I can't say enough about the company itself and the people in the company itself. So responsive. Like you, Rory, they're across the pond from us. And during our day, whenever we have a question, whenever we have something that we're wrestling with and want to try and figure out the best way to do it, we get responses like immediately. It doesn't matter if it's our morning or our evening, which just, kind of stuns me. I'm wondering when these people sleep, if they sleep at all. So our experience with the company and the platform has just been fantastic. They're really been a great partner. We were looking for somebody that was more of just a product, but would also be a partner with us because, as Adam has shared, we're doing something that hasn't been done before. And so we need more than a platform. We actually need partners to be able to pull this off.
Fantastic. And to go from your partnership with Engage, I guess, how did the Optima Domi platform, as well as your partnership with Engage, help teachers to understand the value of VR as a learning tool?
Yeah, Rory, that's a tremendous question. When you're trying to craft the world's best online school, you're thinking of those things in terms of a couple of factors. One, teachers still matter. Teachers are at the center. And so giving them the tools that they need to create meaningful instruction where, we're having rich discussions is really, really important. And so if you think about one of the key aspects of a classical education, it goes beyond just the great books, reading great works of literature or the 7 liberal arts, right? It speaks directly to Socratic discussions as a methodology. And so when we think about students together online, having rich discussions, the tools like Zoom or even this Riverside we're on today are not, just because of the audio engineering, right, are not really helpful tools for a 3rd grade class of 25 students to have a Socratic discussion. If you're in the metaverse around an oblong shaped table and teachers can track and facilitate those rich discussions, they can see the body language of students as they're wrestling with ideas, that discussion comes to life. The second piece is the nature of Engage as a social VR platform. Many people that are innovating in this space are building single player experiences. One of the things that Vince and I know to be true that maybe some of our competitors would disagree with us on is the power of social VR as a learning tool. 3rd graders like to learn from other 3rd graders, right? You still need a content expert to be the leader, but there is very rich opportunity for 3rd graders to know their peers, to build community, to have that common courtesy of connection that we can't create in a video chat platform. And so the second piece of the secret sauce is the relationships that they build in the metaverse with their fellow students. My kids are in online school. They don't know any of their classmates' names, but in the metaverse, they are very familiar with their classmates, and they're excited to go and meet them in person and take trips to their homes. Lastly is using the location as the 3rd teacher. And so as we think about the power of a great book, the great books were the best empathy machines we ever have invented, right? They were just incredible empathy machines. So we had the opportunity to use those great books as portals into the world that we wanted to travel to be able to interact with some of the greatest minds ever in civilization. And VR is the new best empathy machine. And so when we're traveling back into a great book, being able to go to ancient Rome or Athens, or even, to the founding of our country in 1776, to be able to travel back into those contexts and have discussions in those contexts just offers a very rich, very engaging experience for the students. And teachers react incredibly well because they are trying to engage students in meaningful learning experiences. And this is just a tremendous tool to have students' full attention.
That's fantastic, and I appreciate the analogy to it to a book. I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it, and it relates back. But what capacity should VR be used as a learning tool? Should it be assistive or more transformative overall?
Yeah, Rory, I really like that question. Vince and I have learned over time that when we're thinking about a curriculum, right? You have three components to that curriculum. You have the planned, you have the delivered, and you have the received. The planned are the lesson plans. These are what teachers do to prepare these engineered experiences that make meaning in students' lives, right? The delivered are the teacher resource guides. These are the field notes. How do I accomplish the objective that I've set out to accomplish? And then you have the received. Those components are, how do we measure what our students are learning? How do we measure that effectively, right? So VR is a big portion of that equation, but it is not the complete portion of that equation, right? And so what that looks like is we have been very intentional about using VR in a social context to learn objectives together. And we have done a lot of work with Engage to bring in more traditional assessment tools into the platform to be able to measure how our students are learning. And so we're going to have the richest data set, we think, in the world, aside from just the richest academic library. We will be able to know what methodologies within the VR space are most efficient, most effective, to really be able to tailor the learning experience and individualize that learning experience for students across the world. So the short answer is VR is a big component, but you need the learning management system married to that. And I think that's another thing that we understand to be true that others may disagree with us on. You're not going to conduct an 8-hour school day in a headset. You're really going to have students in 30 to 40 minute classes, depending on where their developmental stage is. And that's going to be teacher directed work. And you're going to marry that to student directed work, where you're really focused on measuring what they learned in the VR experience. So it makes school much more efficient.
Could you introduce us to some of the technology that you are using to help moderate and manage students and their feedback?
So in when we're operating inside of it, Engage, we have the ability to actually record the entire classroom session and what's happening there, and then go back into that later. And as an auditor, if you will, or third party observer, you can actually see what the instructor is doing and what the students are doing and how they're reacting to it. So you can really analyze what's going on there. The platform itself tracks every interaction and every movement, if you will, which is something that we really didn't have before, even in a brick and mortar setting. Whatever student you're looking at, you've got a good idea of what they're doing, but we're actually able to understand what's happening with all the students all the time, which I think is really tremendous. We have another platform partner that we're working with to actually manage what any student has access to via the headset. And so we're able to create an extremely secure environment, basically one where the students can't get out and nobody can get in unless we're opening and closing doors for them. So we've been really, very thoughtful about every single element of this and how we approach it. And all of our platforms and our tools, our teachers, including our LMS, all are providing a tremendous amount of data back. As Adam was saying, about a year from now, when we've gone through this, we'll be the richest data set probably on the planet of what it's like to teach in virtual reality day after day, every subject area, multiple grade levels. We don't see that happening anyplace else right now.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, mate. And I wanted to ask, what is the benefit of a potentially international but national VR borderless school? Or in other words, what is the benefit of an educational metaverse experience?
Yeah. This is a really great question, Rory, because if you think about it, in 1990 we had 4 million people on the internet. Today we have almost 5 billion people on the internet, right? As you think about immersive computing and extended reality, today we have, we've had adoption, but we're going to have 1 billion people in headsets by 2027. So we're at the front end of a wave that is inevitable. And I think people understand that we're already in the metaverse, but the metaverse is 2 dimensions. The internet is the metaverse, right? And the internet itself is moving into 3 dimensions. And so when we think about what is the benefit of creating a educational platform within that context, we have taken a contrarian approach to this. Most people are asking what will change in the future around education. What we've started with is what will stay the same. So the delivery will change. Okay, we know that the internet's moving in 3 dimensions, but what will stay the same is the great books, the 7 liberal arts, the teacher at the center, right? Vince and I always joke, quarterbacks matter. This is a very American perspective, right? Tom Brady just retiring, right? The teacher matters. It is not teachers are not bank tellers. Teachers are not, folks who should be put at the back burner. They should be at the front and center of the learning experience. And so these are the things that will stay the same no matter how the borders change. You talk about a borderless experience. The other thing that is at the core of what we are doing is the teaching of virtue. And so this is a very important piece because, we've had online school now for 30 years, and no one has taught students or scholars how to behave online. And so some of the most disruptive and negative behavior that we have on our planet exists in our current metaverse. And so our mission is to teach virtue, civic virtue, online through a virtual reality delivery. And so if you think about that, no one is rushing to own that space in the way we are, right? What we really want is we want students and that kind of Aristotelian society to fully humanize. We believe this tool will help people be more human online. We think it's the best empathy machine in the world. And what do we need in our world today more than empathy? If you think about the idea in VR of perspective taking, not walking a mile in someone's shoes, but walking a mile in someone's avatar, right? You think about the ability to empathize with people around the world, have experiences that help people understand what it is to have the lived experience of somebody miles and miles away from us. Somebody's got to own that space, because it's clear to me that in the metaverse, that will occupy the entertainment lives of our folks, that will occupy the media lives of our folks. We want to occupy the moral lives of students, and we want to have our world become a better place. And we think that's the function of education, rather than just trying to create something to day trade people's attention.
I think that's a very fantastic point.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize something Adam was saying there, because we're very intentional about how individuals in the metaverse interact with each other. So that is a part of the classroom instruction. What's acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable behavior, because it is so, realistic, if you will. I mean, you're in there with your peers and you're in there with the teacher. And so we actually we've got a code of conduct that how you operate in this environment, how you interact with folks doesn't apply to the checkerboard of faces because you're just staring at a face and there's none of that going on. But in VR, we can actually teach those virtues. We can teach those codes of conduct and apply them in that environment. And that's tremendous to be able to bring that back into the teaching environment that you lose in an online school. There's really no way to do that in an online school except if you're doing it in the metaverse.
As I say, fantastic point, and I completely agree. I think it's a very good approach because if it's fair to say, I feel like you're creating an ethical educational solution.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I wanted to learn more about the feedback you got from staff and students, not overall, but perhaps during and then after COVID-19 pandemic.
So we've piloted this in several different geographies throughout the United States. Rural geographies, urban geographies, suburban geographies. And people are struck by that sense of presence. And to be honest, Zoom fatigue is very real. Rory, we've already had a couple of interruptions in our conversation today. And, we're excited to be on with you. But if we had the opportunity to be in the metaverse together, we might be more excited about that, right? And so one of the key factors is the loneliness issue that you feel when you're in the checkerboard of faces, the lack of human connection. I think we're solving for that. Excuse me. The second piece is that because it is such an engaging platform around locations, right? People are struck by where they're able to go. It's the best time machine we have, right? So people are able to travel back into Pompeii or go to the White House or, go to see the Northern Lights. And so there's a way in which we're hacking time and space, which is very exciting and engaging. I think lastly, the teacher being able to use the tool to push students academically. I think that was a surprise for folks. I think when people see two-dimensional video, they don't see the academic seriousness. But the feedback that we've gotten from teachers is that they've been able to layer on rigor and extend students' thinking in a way that they've just never been able to do in Zoom. So they find that students are more interested in writing, reading, thinking more deeply about their experiences when they're able to actually access some of the objectives within a virtual reality context. So for example, when we're studying the lungs, and students are able to enter the lungs rather than see a two-dimensional version of the lungs. And maybe they're juxtaposing something like COPD to asthma, some type of, naturally occurring respiratory illness versus, something that is induced by human behavior. They're able to extend their thinking beyond that experience and research using more traditional methods. And that research becomes richer and more intentional because they've actually entered the lungs and looked around and seen how blood flows through the lungs. And it's allowing students to draw connections. And because it's a social experience, they're hearing and feeding off of the insights of not only the expert in the room, but their peers. So that level of engagement and that level of interest allows students to extend their thinking beyond when they're doing the kind of student-directed individual work afterwards.
Fantastic. It's all very exciting stuff and it's very insightful as well. For our listeners, I'd like to know what the best way is to keep up to date with the Optima Domi project.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the first and foremost thing to follow is, our school is called Optima Classical Academy. And so I would encourage all of the listeners to go to www.optimaclassical.org. And we will be rolling out a private version very soon so that students who are around the world can enroll. Right now, it is available for residents of the state of Florida in the United States. But follow our website. Very soon, we will be adding the opportunity for students all over the world to enroll, and you do not have to be an American to enroll. And so that's a very exciting announcement we wanted to be able to share with you at XR today. The other place to easily follow us is right on social media. So if you search for Optima Classical Academy, you'll be able to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. LinkedIn is a tremendous place to follow us, and TikTok for our younger millennial and Gen Z folks. We're building content on TikTok as well. So you can follow us on the social media platform of your choice, but would highly encourage you to check us out there as well.
Fantastic, covering all bases. That's it from myself, and I thank you both for joining me today, and maybe in the future we can meet in the metaverse.
We need
great,
to.
Rory.
We need
Yes.
to. That's our preference always.
Always. Nice to meet you.
For our listeners, get more XR news by following our social pages. I'm Rory Greener from XR Today. Thank you very much for watching.